Hello and welcome to Podstalgia, the podcast where we look back in order to look forward. I nicked that catchphrase from one of my customers. Thanks very much. So who have we got today, you ask? Who have we got today? Well, we've got none other than film director, filmmaker, film writer, Jon Spira, a man that's worked with many, many great people, and he's an absolute peach himself as well. So, Jon Spira. You know what I've been doing this morning, John? I went to buy some toys yesterday. I went to buy this massive collection of toys, and the guy was so, I could tell he just wasn't comfortable. So I got to the point of transferring the money. The money was about to go. I'd literally got the bank app up, and he agreed a price. And I just looked at his face, and I just thought, this isn't the right for him. So I just said, look, I don't want to buy it now because you look. So
it was like him letting go. It's like he didn't want to let go of.
let go. He didn't want to let go, and it was like I said, I can't do it. So we're just gonna leave it. So I did.
What was
Oh, Master of the Universe stuff, but it was all the modern stuff. It was all modern
right?
stuff. It wasn't. I wasn't going to lose sleep as such, but it was a lot of stuff, a lot of money's worth, and I could have done with it. That's how we got a lot of stuff in. But
There were a lot of people selling stuff off because of cost of living.
yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah, but yeah, it was just one of them days. So essentially, John, I'm looking forward to today's podcast because I'm a bit down in the dumps because I've been failed
Oh,
yesterday. You know what I've been doing to cheer myself up because I'm at that age. Been looking at
what?
jet washers.
You were looking at what?
Jet washers.
Jet washers.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm looking at like how much power they've got. It's amazing. I want it. I'm buying a jet washer.
That is way more my wife thing. You know, I've actually I've to somewhat to my shame, I've got much more into collecting in the last few years,
Yeah.
and that's kind of because we've become a bit more settled and we've had a bit more money,
Yeah.
and we just bought our first house about a year ago. So I've had stuff in storage just for years, you know. There was this point when we first got together when I got made redundant, when I had like a proper job and I got made redundant. And I just said to she was my girlfriend at the time, we were living together, and she was like, "How are you going to pay the rent? Because we're in London and rent is
Yeah.
insane here." Uh, and I said, like, there's going to be, there's always work coming in. I'm not too worried about that. But there was a worrying point coming up, and I said, I'll just sell some stuff. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I've got stuff. I've got like," and she hadn't really seen, like, I've always had bits and pieces in my office, but the truth is, most of my stuff. I had a cottage back in Oxford, and I'd locked the attic, and most of my stuff was stored kind of away up there. And I said to her, "I'll go back to Oxford with a car, and I'll bring back some stuff, and I'll sell it on eBay." And she was like, "Okay." And I came back, the next day, and she was like, "What is this crap?" And, and, and I was just like, "It's film stuff. I've collected film stuff since I was a kid." So I was like, "It's just film stuff." And she was like, "It's crap." And I was like, "I will admit that some of this is crap, but I know that it's got value." "Oh, I know, mate." But I was like, "But I know it's got value to it." And she says, "All right, fine." So I stuck it all on eBay, and she could not believe how much money it made. And it was stuff that I wasn't that attached to. And it was really great because it was stuff that I hadn't paid a lot of money for back in the day, stuff that I didn't really care about anymore. And it got us through probably 3 months of difficulties in terms of rent. And then same thing happened when we got pregnant with my daughter. There was this kind of moment where we were kind of like, we'd been trying to sell the cottage to buy a house. The cottage wasn't selling, and off you go.
That's on the keyboard.
Nightmare. And I just said to her, "I'll just sell some more," and she was less surprised. But it was really good for me because it kind of, the weird thing was I hadn't been collecting that much at that point. But when I kind of went through all the old stuff and started selling it because it wasn't stuff that kind of really appeal to me anymore, it made me start going, "Ooh, you know what? I may not like this, but I've always wanted one of those, and I could pick up one of those." And I kind of it was not the best thing for me because it kicked off the collecting instinct again. And my collection now is very different to kind of what it used to be, but it's kind of a lot more kind of refined as to kind of who I am and kind of, you know, where it all came from.
And that defines us, doesn't it? That stuff, that nostalgia. That's what we're talking. This podcast is about nostalgia. But I think the same thing for me when I got married to my wife Jen. She just said that and I was trying to do bits from home and stuff like that, selling bits and bobs and collecting my own stuff. And she just went, "Get this out of my house." And that's really how Leicester Vintage Toy Shop started. Because of my wife just going, "What is this rubbish? Get it out, get it out." And that's where it started from. So yeah. So your experience of like, you know, this is rubbish, essentially, was kind of the same as my wife Jen, who is now owns 50% of the business now, and you know, only works. She works in here. Actually, this is my office, John. I'm not showing you this.
I saw them. I watched Matt's episode.
Matt's episode. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's a garage essentially. I've made the decision to wear shorts today, which was really stupid because it's freezing in here. But can I show you my new sign? I've got a new sign.
Yeah.
My mate Wayne Mitchelson, talented artist, absolute extraordinary.
Wow, beautiful.
That for me, and that's going to be our new sign that goes up on here. But if anybody knows, I don't do DIY, and this counts as a DIY job, so I'm not allowed legally to do it.
Yeah, I don't do DIY either. I'm always very envious of people who live in places like Leicester, where real estate is more realistic, you know. Because I've never had space until we bought this house, and I finally had
excuse me,
a room, you know, for my stuff. Well, and I say a room for my stuff, it's my office. Like I work here all day, every day. But like you know, it's hard to have if you're of a collective spirit, it is very hard to have space in London to do anything. You know?
Yeah, this is again though, we can't afford to buy a place like where we live. We've been renting this, you see. So,
right.
But it's this lovely space that I can work in, and yeah, because I use it as an office, as a studio, as all sorts of different things. It becomes a jack of all trades. Like, yes, the shop's only open 3 days a week now, and that's brilliant because every day we're pumped, we're on it. Oh, we've got so many amazing changes coming for the shop, but you know, it's going to be amazing. So all this sort of stuff is new to me as well. But I did want to ask you because I think one of my customers, Joey, put it this way: he's sort of looking back to look forward. This is what kind of the vibe of this whole thing is. So
yeah.
Were you born in Oxford?
I was born in Oxford.
It's quite posh then, doesn't it, really?
Makes me incredibly posh. I was born lower middle class, and I would say that in that my mother both my parents had been to university. My mother was a university lecturer and my dad was a shop manager. So I'd say that's kind of basically
that's
lower middle class, and I would say that in my childhood we ascended to middle class in terms of my mum getting promoted and my dad getting promoted to some degree, and you know, but that we didn't have money. I would say we were secure. I wouldn't say we were comfortable. Dad had to work away for a few years because he couldn't find work in Oxford, and I mean, Mum was the major breadwinner, and kind of what came out of that, which I think kind of has resonance in my life now, is that me and my sister were very supportive, and my parents gave us their time, but they didn't put a lot of stock in toys. They didn't put a lot of stock in that stuff, you know, and there was a whole thing especially coming from my grandmother, of like cheap plastic tap. A lot of the modern toys of the kind of 70s and 80s were looked down upon by members of my family. And so we didn't have a lot of toys. I had I had Star Wars figures, but I never had ships. I never had play sets or anything like that. And when I got a bit older and I had pocket money and I had choices to make, I did go for action figures. I've always loved action figures, but I did it in quite a random way. And the stuff that I picked up was, I mean, like I had Masters of the Universe toys, but I never had He-Man or Skeletor. It was always just the weirder,
Yeah.
there was the one I had that I loved had like a grappling hook that came out of his stomach or something.
Oh, uh, yeah, web store. Thank you. I'm trying to web store. Oh, the grappling
Um,
hook comes out on a like a line.
yeah, I mean that's what I liked about action figures, and especially about Masters of the Universe, was the ones that did things,
Yeah.
the ones that had movements and did kind of weirder kind of stuff. But I didn't have a huge amount, and that's not like, you know, I'm not calling deprived or anything like that. But like my parents had a big kind of you know, their ethos. When I would kind of get bratty and kind of go, well, this kid's got loads of toys,
Yeah.
their response was always, well, that kid's parents can't be bothered to spend time with them. You know, that kid gets the toys because they don't get the
That's why
attention.
my kids have got a lot of toys. I just don't like them.
Well, I now have a backwards and forwards with my wife about our daughter because, you know, we give her a huge amount of time, but I still kind of want to give her toys.
Yeah,
You
but
know, I still see cool
I,
stuff.
for me, you kind of do as much as you can. And, time spent with kids and also those memories, the classic sort of stuff that, because the thing is, when you're a kid, there are things that happen to you that, if you're in like a nice, supportive, healthy bringing, which are sort of priceless and have stayed as family memories. So to build those memories is really important. But that's good.
It,
So Oxford then was it? Or did you go? Did you? What did you do for? Did you do school in Oxford? Then did you go
yeah,
to?
I was in Oxford my whole childhood, and then I went to Edinburgh for film school. I took a year out, so I must have been 19.
So why
Um,
films? Why film school? Or was it just that thing? I mean, I think I never went to uni. I didn't have the qualifications. I didn't even try, but I was very interested in the other university students. Um, so yeah, so uni in Edinburgh. Edinburgh is an amazing place. So, but why
it's
film? Why
but
film?
it wasn't Edinburgh Uni. Like I want to make it
Oh
very clear
right,
that
okay.
Edinburgh Uni, it was the Scottish Film School, which was a
Okay.
separate thing. And in fact, by the time I got there, it was a nightmare anyway. But basically, I'm not I'm not an academic person. I didn't do well in school in anything apart from art and English. Those were just the two things. I could always write, but I was not. I could always write. I was always creative, but I couldn't necessarily like English literature was not like a strong point for me. You know, like
Me and you are the same because I
there you
love
go.
music. I was
Use
strong in
the
music.
beard, a little wig. It really
Yeah,
confused people.
it would be. Yeah, it'd be like, yeah, you'd need a bit more time. Uh, but I, I just at school I couldn't. I wasn't particularly academic. I loved music. I loved doing. I did like sports. I do like sports. So music and PE, and they were my kind of things. But I loved English, and I had a really wonderful English teacher, and she was brilliant because I got it because I didn't know where the commas were meant to go and all the other bits that you put in. So that was my thing. But I was a creative writer, so I used to write this cut, and she encouraged that. She was like, you're good at this. Let's do this." So she'd make me use my imagination. That's what it was about.
And I think back in the day. I mean, I'm assuming you're the same kind of. I'm 47. I'm assuming
I'm
you're
40. Yeah, we're the same age. We're the same
there we
age.
go. And the sad
I've just had a heavier paper round, John. That's all.
I think the sad thing about some education back then, certainly what I experienced, was that they put the emphasis on the wrong thing. And like you say, like when you say like, you know, I didn't know where to put full stops and commas and stuff like that. I mean, what a shame, because like it's such a shame that they put the focus on that and make you think that that's what's important.
Yeah.
When the truth is, what's important is self-expression. And the thing that has upset me, having lived an entire life working in the arts in different ways, a lot of people are really scared of trying to write books or trying to make films because when they were kids, they were basically told they were stupid. They were told they didn't understand it. And the truth is, we all find our different ways to express ourselves. You know, everyone finds their ways to express, and in as simple as just how you talk, how you construct sentences. You know, if you can make a friend with someone, then you can express yourself to a degree that people like, which means that you could write a book that people could connect with, or you could make a film, or you could do a painting and stuff. And the thing that's so sad is that back in the day, I don't think it's true now, but back in the day, all of these kind of forms of self-expression were governed by these gatekeepers who would tell people that you had to understand certain forms before you were even allowed access to it, you know. And I've never had time for that, and I hate that. And I've taught and I've made stuff myself, and I always I don't, hey, I'm a rule breaker, but like I always go with my gut, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But when it does work, you connect with people. And you know, I've self-published 3 books, and the first one I put out was a real shot in the dark for me, because I've never written a book, and it was kind of a memoir as well, which was a bit scary for me, but I really wanted to do it because it was about video shops. I'd spent my whole life in video shops. I used to own video shops, and I really wanted to write this book about video shops because there wasn't one that existed. And it was really interesting. I've had a really good response from it over the years, and people still talk to me about it, and it makes me really happy. But you know, there was a small amount of people who would read it and say kind of like, you know, oh, you know, I got annoyed with the grammar. I got annoyed with how you construct sentences, and how, you know, the sentences go too long, or, you know, all that kind of thing. And I was just like, you know, I'm not going to apologize for that, because that's how I express myself. Like, I write how I speak, and that could be, you know.
Yeah, but that's kind of the way I see it. When you read something out loud, it's important to think about how you do it conversationally. I think that's sort of something that always comes across with anything you do.
Absolutely. And then, you know, it's really good now that like when you watch TV, you hear, I mean, do you remember, it was only a few years ago where all of the voices on TV and radio were, you know, Queen's English clipped accents, you know. And I love that now you can turn on Channel 4 and it'll be someone with, you know, with an accent which sounds, you know, like it could have come from different parts of the world, from different cultures, working class voices. You know, it's all kind of, it's all becoming acceptable. People are starting to realize that however you express yourself, you know, you're not a better person for sticking to the Queen's English.
I think it's the one thing we've got to thank Big Brother for. That's it.
That's actually really true. To some degree, that's actually really true.
Because that was really different.
That's what, wasn't it?
Yeah, so and so's into the diary room, and you're like, that was my kind of vague Geordie. It goes a little bit shop display mode, my accent, so you have to stay with it.
It's really true, you know. And I've excuse me, I've got my issues with Channel 4. You know, I think Channel 4 does a lot of quite exploitational TV these days, which I don't like.
I don't watch TV. You know, I don't.
Yeah, so like I've heard mention of this.
Yeah, I don't.
You just don't watch TV at all.
I don't know how. So listen, this is the ultimate example. I went to a electronic shop to buy a TV, and I was bored. My wife said, "Going, look, which one do you think's good?" And I was like, "I don't know. That one looks good. It's quite big." But I was interested in the sound, so I was interested in that. So I was like, "Let me stand over here." I was like I was sound checking at a gig, like they're back there going, "Oh no, you need to take that down." I was like, "Yeah, I wanted to see what it's like from the side." So I was like, "Well, you know, that's pretty good." Whereas the other one was like, so I did that, and I was, yeah, okay, we'll get that one. And then I said, "Oh, we could do with a Hoover." And like as a treat, she let me go and buy a new Hoover, and I was so excited about the Hoover. So we've got 2 Hoovers, one called Tyson the Dyson, and another one called Alan, who's like a robot Hoover that goes around the house. I love Alan; he's amazing.
I don't think TV has improved.
There are things that I will watch. I watched the new Star Wars thingy. I watched the Ahsoka thing. I watched Mandalorian. I've watched that, but I am a bit rubbish. But I do. There are things I'm very enthusiastic about, and there's certain characters that I like because I've seen the toy and I think, oh, that's quite cool. I want to find out a bit more about it. But I just find I don't have time. I'm busy creating, doing things, and I don't have time to sit and watch like anything longer than, I don't know. I don't think I've got the concentration span for a 2-hour film. I'm trying to watch this film. My son said, Dylan, who's 14, wants to show me this film. I can't remember what it's called. But I'm about 45 minutes in, and I'm like that going. I start to think, oh, this needs to be done. Oh, that'd be a good idea for this. So films and programs do inspire me, but I just don't have the concentration. I haven't got the makeup for them. I don't think.
Have you ever? Are there films that you've seen that you sat down and from beginning to end you've been
Oh
locked in?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, in that case, if you've got the capacity for it, what
Yeah.
it means is that you're not watching very good films.
Well, I just haven't got the learning. Yeah,
I don't think that's true at all. I don't think that's true.
I'm only joking. I'm only joking. I think we'll get to we're going to do a top 5 films at the end of this because
Sure.
that's something I think. Top 5 films. Then you can convince me, and I will try and go and watch one for you, John, especially for you.
I've got one for you. I've definitely that's the worst thing you can do to someone whose life is film is say what are your top 5 films, because that's like an hourly change.
I know, and but you don't get held to it. It's like music, isn't it? It's the same thing. I did want to ask you about music because that's kind of looking at your films and the things that you've done. Music was a big thing for you. So what was your musical influence growing up?
It was I mean, my main music influence growing up was probably my sister, to begin with. I had a big sister. I have a big sister. And she got me into a few things when I was kind of little. So my relationship with film is the big thing in my life. Like, I got into film when I was 5 years old, and at 5 years old I decided I was going to be a film director, and I've never wavered on that. Wow. It's a really weird thing. And sometimes in my life, it's been lucky to know exactly what I wanted to do, and sometimes in my life, it's been really destructive because it's not an easy thing to attain or to manage to make a living from. So film was always like this guiding force, and I always felt that I didn't have room in my life for anything else at all, to be honest. And when I was 14. Something quite funny happened, which is that, so I was at school, obviously, and I think when I was 13, when would that have been? 89. Yeah, 13. I saw the film Highlander,
right?
Which is one of the films which is going to be on my list anyway.
Spoiler.
You haven't seen that? That's a wonderful film on so many levels. And I was obsessed with it. And the basic thing of Highlander is it's a guy who's immortal, and you see him throughout the film at all stages of his life. And the main two are kind of modern day New York and kind of medieval times, Yeah. And I fell in love with this film. I've never fallen out of love with this film. And it's the only film that when I watch it, I mean, talking about nostalgia, it's the only film which still, every time I watch it, has the excitement of the first time I saw it.
Wow.
I'm always scared when I put it on that it's going to go. I'm always scared that it'll be a viewing where I go,
That's high praise indeed. That's amazing.
It's not even a great film. I'm not even going to hold it up and say like it's the most perfectly made film, but it speaks to me for some reason. It excites me. And I fell in love with it. So the first time I saw it, it was unlike, and it remains unlike any other film ever made. But one of the takeaways for it for me, for some reason, was I really want to grow my hair long, because both the main character, or in fact all of the main male characters in the film have long hair. Sean Connery's got a great big wig on, and the bad guy's got great big. I mean, his hair's like my hair. And so I said to my mum, I want to grow my hair long. She said, whatever you want to do, fine. So I guess within a year of first seeing Highlander, I had long hair, and the thing that was really weird and unexpected about that was it kind of gave me access to a new group of people in my school who were all the people who were into music and stuff. And I think they had assumed that I'd grown my hair long because, I was listening to Metallica, and the truth is I was watching, this terrible fantasy film from about the 1400s. But having access to those people and having those people talk to me and want to be friends with me, because at that point, I was wearing darker clothes anyway. I started looking like a goth. So then my sister was like, well, you should listen to goth music. It's really good. And she gave me some Cure albums and I started getting into music a lot. So between kind of 14 and Oxford I mean, I made a film about my first
Yeah.
documentary was about Oxford music called Anyone Can Play Guitar. What has happened in Oxford over the years is insane, and nobody knows about it, and they still don't know about it because the film I made, it didn't get seen, it didn't get a proper release. You know, it's on DVD.
It's highly rated. There's a lot of nice reviews
It is.
about it.
It's I look, I mean, and I'm not gonna be shy about it. I'm really proud of it. Like it was a real labor of love, and and really growing up in Oxford, Oxford naturally created this bizarre music scene where where there were kind of these levels of venues. You could start playing, you know, the back room of a pub, and then you could play kind of like a small venue, and then you could play the small room in a big venue, and then you could play the big room in a big venue. And over the course of like 4 years as a band, you could see yourself getting to the point where you could leave Oxford as a professional band.
There's that
And it's
famous photo, isn't there? That famous
say again,
photo.
sorry?
There's that famous photo of Radiohead, and they've got literally a dog, a man and a dog watching them play, and it's Radiohead. But it's that whole. It's like a music family tree. We did this in Derby, being in bands in Derby. We did a music family tree. None of our bands were really successful, unless you count a band like Cable or the Beyond. That was sort of bands that were relatively successful from Derby. The drummer from the Beyond went to play in Therapy. But we had this whole. Everybody's related, but the weird thing, like with all these bands, with Radiohead, Supergrass, Foals, Candy Skins, Swerve Driver, The Unbelievable Truth. What a great band they were!
They
Fantastic!
just did a reunion gig. We went to a reunion gig like
Wow! Settle down. Oh, what a tune, man! It's amazing.
yeah. And that was Tom York's little brother. It's Andy
Yeah,
York.
they were brilliant.
One of my best friends, Nigel, is in that band. He was the drummer in that band. And
Was he? Wow.
and he's been in everything. I mean, Nigel's he's in Anyone Can Play Guitar, because he was a guy who was basically like, he was kind of in Radiohead for a bit,
Yeah.
and he's done a ton of Oxford bands. And yeah, I mean, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was thinking about the things that you said, and going back to earlier when you were talking about film, like your haircut, your hair. At the time, I was also influenced by a film for a hairstyle. I did have hair once. I mean,
Which film though?
right, get it. This is like, yours is Highlander, right? Mine is Gleaming the Cube.
Ah, you had Christian Slater hair, like
No, I didn't have the centre parting that you needed for Christian Slater, but I had my hair quite. It was a side parting.
right.
The young Tony Hawk. You got to remember, I was
So
watching.
right now you have to put up a photo.
Yeah, oh yeah, I will do. The Tony Hawk sort of style of like being like down there and then up there. And that was my kind of. I thought I went with that, and I was Mum wouldn't let me have it long at the back, so it was like it had to be cut. But I had this long bit here, which was like sort of, oh yes, like a moody teenager. But that was Gleaming the Cube. So if you haven't ever seen that, anybody that's watching or listening to this, it's a pretty poor film. I have watched it again recently, and it is a poor film, but I still love it. And it's what you said about the nostalgia element. It's like sadly I lost my best friend when I was 16 years old. He was killed in a car accident. And in the film, in Gleaming the Cube, when he loses his brother, spoiler alert, if you've not watched the film, he loses his brother. He goes and puts a chess piece on his coffin. And that's something I did as well when I went to. So films influence you in a weird way, man.
You know, when I used to teach, something that I was very kind of passionate about is I call it the Spira paradigm, and I'd always like draw a little cross on the board, and in each of the 4 sections I would write good, bad, like, dislike. And I think it's really important to when you're talking about films, to some degree, when you're talking about anything, music, anything like that, to understand how those things link up. And you can say that a film is bad, like it's a badly made film. You know, there are definite kind of things you can look at to say that's a badly made film, but you can also like it.
Yeah,
you know,
I love the Blues Brothers.
And people get confused by that. People think because they like something it's good, or because they dislike something it's bad. And I'm always trying to encourage people to kind of get a bit more critical thinking in, and this is where nostalgia comes in, and be able to say, look, it's not a great film, but there are elements of it which speak to me, and that's what make it really, really important, you know. And that's something which, when you're creative, it becomes important as well, because that's how people will relate to your work. And people might relate to your work in really strange ways. Once it gets out into the world, it's kind of not yours anymore, you know. But I had a really kind of difficult experience with my second film, which was called Elstree 1976, which was about people who had been extras in the first Star Wars movie, you know. And I still think it's, in a lot of ways, I think it's probably my best film. You know, it's something that I'm really proud of. I worked really hard on. Star Wars fans hated it. They hated it, and it wasn't made for them. And I got a lot of flack for it, and it affected my mental health quite badly for a while, because I would get into a lot of arguments with people online about this kind of thing, where I'd just be going like, it wasn't made for you. Like, it's an intelligent documentary about, and in fact, it's the dark side of what we're talking about now. It's the dark side of nostalgia, because what I had observed when I was kind of sucked into that world temporarily was actually nostalgia can be really damaging. And in Star Wars fans in particular, I was seeing this, and I was seeing these people who were 40 years old, who were obsessed with the minutiae of Star Wars, and I'm like, I think that's holding you back. Like, I think you're not actually experiencing any other form of culture. And now, in this day and age, because we don't have 3 TV channels anymore, and you can watch whatever you want whenever you want, I'm looking at these people and I'm kind of going, you know, man, the average person on the street was more intelligent than you 20 years ago. And because you don't have to watch news, you're not watching news. And because you don't have to read a newspaper, you're not reading a newspaper. All you're doing is surrounding yourself with Star Wars stuff. That can be really detrimental, to kind of wrap yourself up in cotton wool in that way, to exist only in a nostalgic environment.
Because your whole life then, everything you do, and this is something we see with guys that collect toys obsessively. Sometimes in extreme cases, we get these guys where their whole world is made up of these toys, their whole world, which means their anger, their spite, their hate, everything else they've got can go into that world. So it might be a character, it might be a toy dealer that puts the wrong weapon with the wrong figure, and therefore they get very angry. It's all that sort of stuff. But you've got to remember that a lot of the times with these people, a lot of the times it's not actually, it's kind of them venting in a way. And if they stopped and thought about it, and if you ever spoke to them in person, they wouldn't say that at all.
Sure, yeah, no, when you get people, I mean, online world is horrible for that kind of thing, because it gives people a kind of protection
Yeah.
and a license to behave in a way they wouldn't behave in person. But it's kind of, I was really interested, like, you know, I knew that the film I'd made was a good film, and I knew that it had an interesting idea that had not been put out into the world before, which was the idea. It was about the fact that, like, when you boil Star Wars down, when you boil it down to its absolute DNA, what you have is a film that was made in suburban London in 1975, 1976, which seemed like it was going to be rubbish. You know, it was this guy who'd come over from America with what seemed like a really ropey idea. And look, all this stuff has become iconic to us now. It's become important. It's become nostalgic. But back in the day, the people who worked on that first film, who were extras on that first film, they would turn up on set and they'd just be like, "What is this rubbish?" You
Yeah.
know, and it's like, actually, they would joke about it. They would laugh about it. And you know, I'm kind of like, when you boil it down to, I keep thinking that, what are these obsessive people looking for? Like, when is enough? What will satisfy them? And when I was doing the research for the film, you know, I found these books, which are huge hardback books, the making of each of the Star Wars films, and they literally tell you day by day, hour by hour, what was happening on set. They've gone through the call sheets, they've broken it all down. And the reason I got into it was because a guy who was in one of my classes, who I'd been teaching, just at the pub one day, he just said to me, "I was in Star Wars." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I was in Star Wars." And he'd been on set quite a bit. He was in, you could just about see him in 2 shots of the film, but he was on set for weeks, you know. And like, he was off at conventions signing photos.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Can I come with? Can I come and sit in on?" He's like, "Yeah, of course." I sat with him at his table, and half the people, in fact, more than half the people, most people just walked past. Like, okay, this is a guy who literally was an extra in Star Wars. Why would I be interested? But then the people who came up to his desk, they couldn't believe they were talking to him. They couldn't believe that they were talking to someone who had been on set of Star Wars, you know. So the whole point of that film was it was looking at 10 different people, very different people, all of whom had been in the first Star Wars film with they'd either been wearing a mask or a helmet, so you couldn't see them very well, but they were in there. And it was about, the first part of the film is about how they got to that point, but most of the film is about how it affects your life, being involved with something so culturally huge. And most of these people, after they'd filmed Star Wars, they'd gone off and just had very normal lives. And it was 20 years after the fact that this swell of Star Wars fandom really started up. And they were hunted down. They're still hunting these people down, you know? And it's crazy. I mean, especially the guys who were in like the stormtrooper costumes, you know, you can't see any of them. They don't know who they are even on the screen.
No.
But they have this value, and they can go out every weekend of the year and they can sign autographs. They can make some money from it.
Which is amazing. It's a gift that keeps on giving, Star Wars, for everyone that's involved in that sort of side of things. But I did feel you captured a point in time as well. It was important to capture it then, because some of those people featured on the documentary, on your film, well, they've gone. They're no longer with us, are they? You know, you've got quite a few. Peter Mayhew, you've got, you know, Jeremy Bulloch. There's quite a few which have now passed away. So it's important to get that side of things, I think.
It is, you know, what Jeremy was kind of a friend, to be honest. Like we had a great relationship with Jeremy, and I was really sad when he died, actually, because he was a lovely, lovely guy. But he was someone who would be very honest with you, because when people praise you in that way, it's easy to kind of go, oh, I must be special. And Jeremy was never like that. Jeremy was someone who was very confused by the Star Wars thing, but happy to make the money, but also happy to make people's day. People were so happy to meet him, and he never disappointed them. He was really kind with people, but when you spoke to him and you kind of spoke to him about his life, he would very much say to you, I was in that Boba Fett costume for about 4 days of my life, and that's all that was. And when the thing that he was the proudest of was, it took me a long time to even track it. It didn't actually end up getting into the film, but he had done a sitcom in the 1980s with Maureen Lipman, in which he played, her best friends were a gay couple. And he said that it was basically the first time a gay couple had appeared in a mainstream British sitcom,
Right.
and not been done as a kind of like John Inman kind of camp ridiculous thing. They were played as normal characters who were witty people, and that was the thing that he was the proudest of in his life. You know, that he had. I think they did like 3 or 4 seasons of it, and he was so proud of that because he felt that he had made a difference and he had improved society somewhat in doing that. But you know, that's not something that Star Wars fans would care about.
No.
And the original opening of the film, which my producer, we still argue about it. He made me change it because he said it was too boring. And he said, you can't start, he always said, you can't start a film with a boring shot. I loved it. But the original opening to Elstree 1976 was a long descent on a tube escalator. And when you got to the bottom, one of our interviewees, Anthony, was busking. And everyone just walked past him. No one stopped and listened. No one threw any money in. But Anthony was the guy who was the stormtrooper who said, "These aren't the droids you're looking for," you know.
Right.
And the thing that was incredible is that in every tube train that came in, and all the people ignored him and walked past him, you'd see at least 3 people in Star Wars t-shirts, and you'd kind of go, "Here's a guy who has written a song and is on a cold day in London singing a song, and you can't be asked to even stop and look at him or throw him 10p. But if you knew that for one day in Tunisia 45 years ago, he had worn that costume and said that line, you would give him 50 quid for an autograph, or
Yeah.
you just want to hear his stories. And that was an irony which just always just intrigued me the whole way through making that film.
Mr. Wendell, man. So,
Mr.
yeah, because it's the people that, you often don't give people value, do you? I think that's part of society, it has been for a long time. You judge people on first sort of thing. Oh, that guy's a busker, that's what you judge him as. That guy's sat on the street, with nowhere to live, that's what you judge him as. And that's sort of one of those things of like, everybody's got value. No, so I love the music. I love the anyone can play guitar. That's a great film. Everyone wants to go and check that out. It's narrated by Stuart Lee as well, so you can't go wrong with that.
Do you know how I got him to narrate it?
No, go on.
Because I'm an independent filmmaker, so we live on our wits, And if you want to make something happen, you just have to make it happen. And that was my first film. He was the only person I wanted to do it. The reason being that when I started doing the research, the only article that had ever been written about Oxford music as a whole had been written by him. So, and he'd been in Oxford, he'd been around Oxford. And so I tried to do the thing you're supposed to do, which is get in touch with the agents and stuff, and complete brush off, because that film literally was made for no money at all, and it was only when I'd kind of pretty much finished the film that we did a crowdfunding thing,
to
be able to pay for the license,
wasn't it? Yeah, and the licensing.
And so there was no money there at all, but I couldn't get through his people. I couldn't get to him, and he was doing a gig in Oxford, and so I found out who his tour manager was, and I somehow got the tour manager's number, and I said, I really need to see him. I need to kind of talk to him. And he was like, and the guy was just like, why? And I had heard that Stuart Lee was a huge fan of the Incredible Hulk comics, and at the time we'd converted half of one of our video stores into a comic store, so I had like these really rare Incredible Hulk comics, and I said to him, well, I've heard he's a huge fan of the Incredible Hulk, and I really want to give him these comics. And the guy goes, no, I can't, you can't do that. And I said, they're really rare comics, and I think he'd be upset if he found out that he had a chance to get them and you'd said no. So can you at least just ask him if he wants these rare comics? And he was like, okay. And then he came 5 minutes later, he phones me and he goes, yeah, he says, Stuart says, come and meet him at the venue at this time, and he'd really love to get those comics. So I put together a pile of comics, and I made a DVD of the edit of the film as it was at that point. And I just said to him, I handed him the whole pile, and then I didn't let go. So we were both holding onto it. And I just said, like, look, have those comics. Like, I'm so happy. I know you love them. I hope you enjoy them. This is a DVD of my documentary about Oxford music. You're the only person who can narrate this film. I desperately want you to do it. I said, just watch it, please. Just watch it. And I was like, if you hate it, you don't have to give me a call, but my phone number's there. If you like it, I would love for you to do narration. And about 3 days later, he phones back and he goes, I'll do it. He said, I know you've got no money. I'm not going to charge you any money. He said, as long as you can book a studio near my house, I'll do a day on it. And he was amazing.
He's a good guy, man. I've met him years ago at Lee and Herring. Went to one of their gigs. My friend went to school with Richard Herring. Went to one of their gigs. Kevin Eldon. What a guy. Kevin Eldon was there as well. And Kevin Eldon, honestly, I have never met a funnier man. Honestly, I thought I was actually going to go at that moment. I thought, that's it, I'm out, lights out. I'm just going to die here. Because he was just so funny. Stuart was very polite, went to bed early, just being Stuart.
I think he's quite shy,
He is, yeah. But he's a genuinely very, very nice man.
He sent me a really, we once the film was finished, he couldn't come. It had a really good premiere, that film, bizarrely, and the BFI had found out about it, and we did a sold out night on BFI South Bank, and they got guys from Radiohead, Supergrass, all to do a Q&A on stage, and Adam Buxton hosted it.
Yeah.
It blew my mind. And Stu couldn't make that, which is a real shame. But Fender had sponsored the film. Fender were amazing. They came in at the last minute and they said because there'd been an article in Guitar World, and then also Adam Buxton had done a piece on his show, and Fender got in touch, and they were like, "What do you need?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they said, "What do you need to get the film finished?" I said, "I need £10,000." And they said, "All right, checks in the post." And I was just like, "What?" And they were like, "Just put our name on the poster. Just put our name on the poster. If there's any publicity, just put supported by Fender. Here's the logo. Stick it on the stuff." And then they said, "You'll like this." They said, "Do you want some guitars?"
Oh man.
I said, I was like, "Do I want some guitars?" "Yeah, yeah. Do you want some guitars?" And I said, "I would love some guitars. Thank you." And I wasn't entirely sure what they meant. And then they were like, "Put us in touch with your graphic designer." So I put them in touch with Nolan, who'd done the poster, and kind of forgot about it. And then the week of the premiere, a truck pulls up, and they gave us 10 half Strats and half Tellys,
Wow.
with the film's branding on them. Right? They'd put the film's logo on these guitars, and they were amazing. And and I phoned up the woman we've been talking to thank her, and she was like, "Look, you can put them in competitions, you can auction them." She said, "Just you keep them, you can give them to friends, like whatever you want." We just thought it's something we do sometimes. And then she goes, "You'll be getting a really special package in a couple of weeks, but we couldn't kind of do it on time." And I was like, "Okay." And 2 weeks later, they sent a one of one. They'd got, I'm trying to remember what the company's called, but it was a company who used to do all of Amy Winehouse's guitars, and they customized guitars properly. And
Right.
they, as a gift to me, they gave me like an anyone can play guitar, and it's a Strat. It's a really good Strat, and it's got a full body artwork. They put all the names of the bands on the back of the film, on the back of the guitar, and like it's still, I've got it framed downstairs. It's like my favorite object in the world. But we went and me and my producer, we went to one of Stu's gigs, and we gave him one of the guitars, and he was so chuffed. Like, he was really kind of chuffed to bits, and he's sweet. And he last I heard from him was in lockdown, and he sent really sweet email just going, "I've watched Elstree 1976 a whole bunch of times and recommended it to a load of people." And he was like, "I was watching it the other day, and I only just clicked it was you who made it."
Wow.
And I was it made me so happy, because I'm not looking for approval from anyone, but my teenage self,
No,
approval from you and me.
it's so important. Doing this, doing everything. I need the comments. I need people to go, "It's okay, you fat idiot. You're all right." I don't, because you do live off the comments, because it makes you want to go. Somebody sent a nice email the other day saying how it helps her with her depression and her PTSD and all this, watching Toy Shop on Tour, watching the things that we do in our content. That for me is just, if I can help someone, I'm happy to do it. It validates you, and it's good.
The reason that we are in touch, the reason that we know each other, is because my daughter, at 4 years old, she asked me about the toys that I played with when I was her age and when I was a kid. And we went on YouTube and we found your show, and the pair of us were just obsessed with it, and we binged it. We did a whole weekend of watching most of them. And then when my wife was like to me, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" I was like, "We want to go up to Leicester and we want to go to the
Yeah,
shop." And it was, I told, I can't remember his name, your friend with the dreads,
Matt. Yeah, Matt.
like, lovely guy. I said to him, like, in my work, I meet famous people all the time, and I'm like, and it's built into me. I'm professional, and it doesn't. In fact, tying back to nostalgia, like, the only people who I ever get really nervous about or get funny about seeing is people who meant a lot to me when I was kind of that age, kind of 12 years old or whatever. But as we're coming up to your shop, I'm just like, "Oh my god, we're going to meet Joe and Gav." It's like, and really, Jean, my daughter was the same. It was just like,
It
"Oh my
is
god."
so silly.
She
It's
was
so.
so shy about meeting you, and you're the only person. You are pretty much the only person, like, who I've ever asked, apart from, like, my mates, who I've ever been like, "Can I have a selfie with you?"
It's not like, it's just a little. We do this thing, and it's lovely when we get people coming in, and it's really cool. I know what you mean though about the kids and stuff like that, because when you're a kid, sorry, when you are looking at those people. The only I'm not bothered about celebrity at all. I've not met them. I wouldn't know who they are. That's a problem. I'm not into film, so I wouldn't even know. But when I've met celebrities, I've kind of gone, oh, hello, yeah, great, thanks very much. On to the next. Because people
They
are
are
people.
just people. It's what you invest in people, and I think there are different kind of levels of it, you know. And for me, the most poignant one is very much, you know, people who meant something to me when I was a kid. That will always be a thing. And in fact, making anyone could play guitar, when I've never made a documentary before, meeting people like Mark Gardner out of Ride, and
Yeah,
even Nick Cope, who was the lead singer of the Candy Skins, who were a huge band in Oxford, but never made it big outside of Oxford. He's now famous because he's on CBeebies, which is incredible. He's got his own show on CBeebies.
really? Wow, that's
Lovely.
amazing.
He does a kids' music show called the Nick Cope Podcast, and it's beautiful. You know, it's beautiful, and he's had this kind of like this success later in life, which is lovely. But when I met him, he was a waiter who had used to have been in a band, you know. But to me, he was the lead singer of the Candy Skins, who, you know, he was a central part of our kind of Friday and Saturday nights. Because they were the coolest band in Oxford. You'd go for a curry, and then you'd go upstairs to the Zodiac, and you'd see the Candy Skins play. And you imbue people with this thing, which, I mean, sometimes they're not even aware of, you know, especially people. I've got a really big thing for people who have been in bands, who have tried and maybe not succeeded. They look at their lives quite often, and they look at it in that way. They go, well, you know, I was in this band, but we didn't make it. And sometimes, you know, I just want to shake them by the neck and just kind of go, that doesn't mean that your music doesn't mean something to people. And there are all these people. My friend Jamie, who does all of the music for my films, who, you know, he was in the Daisies, which was a huge Oxford band back in the day. And you know, he's someone now who he's always doing music for fun and in bands, and he's got his own studio, and that's how he makes his living and stuff. But like, they reformed the Daisies for one gig this summer, and we went across to see it. People travel from all over the world, and I just kind of wanted to say to him, do you understand that, like, that it doesn't matter that your band didn't become famous and it didn't make money. Like, there are people all over the world who carry your music in their heart,
Yeah,
and that's a huge thing. And I think in music in particular, musicians don't really get that. There's this metric which they're held to. Like, were you big? Were you famous? Did you achieve that kind of thing? Where actually the truth is that, you know, sometimes a song you heard from a band who split up when you were 21 years old,
yeah.
that song will stay with you your whole life, and that's got
And
great
that's
music.
it. They're on a playlist somewhere. There was
Yeah,
I remember going back to bands and stuff like that. And I think bands now, quite a lot of the bands that I like, aren't necessarily bands that you would hear in the charts. You know, the band that I love at the moment is a band from Nottingham called Do Nothing. They're brilliant. They're absolutely amazing. I turned up at a Do Nothing gig. There was an album release. Their album had been on a hiatus because of COVID and whatnot. I turned up at their album release. It was quite well attended in like a small upstairs club in Nottingham. And I was sat next to this guy and I'm thinking, who's this guy? I recognise this guy from somewhere. You know who he looks like? And I'm saying to my mate who was sat with me, I said, yeah, he looks like the bass player from Everything, Everything. And it was. It was the bass player. So you get chatting to these people because they're all into the same sort of stuff. So these bands that aren't, I mean, hopefully they'll go on to big things. But that always spoils it for the real fans, you know, they go on to big things. But you're right.
it's,
Everybody's on a playlist. If you were in a band and you had moderate success and you were good, you'll be on a playlist somewhere.
and I love that now. I mean, like, you know, music has changed a lot, and one of the sad things is Spotify has meant that it's very hard to make a living as a musician now. Like, it's just,
Yeah,
you're not going to make a living on record sales and stuff. But what is possible with the internet, and this is true of for all areas of the arts, and this is something that I love, is that you are able to create a cottage industry now. You're able to make a modest living doing what you love if you work hard, you know, and that is great. There are no gatekeepers anymore. You know, I wrote a book this is going back just before COVID, because this all happened during COVID. But it was the third book that I'd self-published. It's about Georges Méliès, the filmmaker from the kind of 1890s, who put the rocket in the eye of the moon.
Wow.
I did everything. I did it all by myself. I wrote the book. I got all of the legal stuff sorted out. I got all of the art sorted out. I got the manufacturing sorted out. And I made a ton of money. I made more money than I've ever made in my life. I sold thousands of copies of this book. It's never seen the inside of a bookshop, but because I did it all by myself, I was able to kind of, support. I mean, Jen was working the whole time as well, but like I was able to support the family for pretty much a couple of years.
Wow.
It was, the money was coming in thick and fast. You'd wake up and you'd go, "Oh my God, I can't believe that overnight all of these orders have come in." And I knew the guys in the post office back in Oxford so well, because like pretty much 4 times a week I'd be driving in there with a great big pile of boxes straight into the depot, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was great. The whole thing changed the second that Apple did some update to their iOS, which blocked a certain form of advertising or something.
Right.
And overnight, sales dropped to kind of almost 20% of what they had been overnight. And by then, I was too involved with the next film to really care enough. So I was just like, okay, well, that was a great thing. But the opportunities are there. And like, you guys, the thing about Toy Shop on Tour is, I mean, I was saying this to you when I met you first time, but like, it's a TV show. Like, you have got together with Matt and you've made your own TV show.
Yeah.
And because it's on YouTube, it's on people's TV. We watched it on our TV in our living room. And what a great world we live in, where you can do that. Where as long as you've got the vision and you put the effort in, you've got the same playing field as the big guys. It's incredible.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's what the thing is today with music or with content, whatever you're doing. You can pretty much do it yourself, even if you're, technically inept like me. I can put this together, and so it is a world of opportunity in that respect. But it's also a lot harder in other respects. The time was when I was playing in bands where you were going out to make a CD or a cassette, and you would have to go to a studio. You'd have to set it up. You spend all day setting it up, and then you'd be putting things in. It'd be costing you money. You'd be on the clock all the time. And the only reason we actually got to record our first album was because we won a competition, and we got given a recording with somebody that had produced Yes and Genesis and the Pogues and people like that, and said, "Oh, you can come in and record with them." And as it turns out, they weren't very good. But the album's okay. It's just very overproduced. It's too compressed, But there we go. That's my thing. That's why I didn't miss that album. No, it's not that. But your nostalgia, you're looking back. It comes through a lot of your projects, doesn't it? You've done this other one, Great British Stuntmen and Otherworldly Characters, which I haven't watched yet. That sounds amazing.
It's on you can watch it for free on ITVX. That is streaming now for free. It's called Hollywood Bulldogs.
That's it.
The Rise of Great British Stuntman. It's a really fun film. That's just a fun film, It's got a little bite in its tail, and there are moments in it which will really surprise you. In terms of kind of human depth, it was just so much fun. It was we interviewed these guys were British guys who were the greatest stuntmen in the world. Yeah. They took over Hollywood in the 70s and 80s. They did the big. They were Indiana Jones. They were James Bond. They were Rambo. They did all these things, and their story is ridiculous. I mean, literally, if you look at like stunts from Hong Kong and from like the Far East, these are people who, when they were kids, they were sent to kind of performing schools, acrobatic schools and stuff. And like in America, these are guys who were like rodeo kind of guys and, cowboys and stuff. But in Britain, they were all just guys from pubs, they were just bouncers.
I could do
that. If they were making a film, they were all film extras. They all started just as film extras, and someone would just go, "All right, lads, in this scene, someone has to fall down a flight of stairs. Who wants a fiver?" They just go, so some nut would just go, I want a favour, I'm sure I could fall down a flight of stairs.
But
And that's literally how stunting started in the UK. And it's a hilarious story, and it's so much fun. And the generation who we interview, who are basically the baby boomer generation, they were the ones who came into it as young men, just from all different walks of life. But they were the ones who changed the industry. They were the ones who actually brought in professionalism and brought in health and safety and stuff. And it's funny because at the end of the film, they're all quite reflective, and they're kind of going, the world that we've created is kind of boring now. You know, like the people who are stunt performers in movies now are all really well-trained gymnasts who are already qualified. You know, it's not like it was in their day, but it's such a fun film. It's really fun.
ITVX is on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they've just also put up. We made a TV series last year called Real Britannia, which is the whole. It's kind of the modern history of British cinema. It's like the whole story at breakneck speed, very opinionated and very kind of angry to some degree, but the story's never really been told.
No.
So I did that as like a 4-part TV series, and that's also and that's streaming for free as well. So like it's and we got Nick Helm, the comedian. He narrated that, and Ray Winston narrated the stuntman one.
It was a great choice because, you know, Gravelly Ray. Yeah, well, you know, yeah.
The thing we kept saying, he was lovely, and we had to record him. It was in lockdown that we were finishing that film off. We were supposed to go to his house, and then he had some kind of gas leak. So at the last minute, we had to find a studio. I wasn't even there. I had to do it remotely because I was looking after my daughter, who's a baby. He was so sweet. We did it all over the computer kind of thing with video kind of link up and stuff. He was hilarious. And he was so sweet with my, like, you know, my daughter kept kind of, you know, I had to keep kind of changing her nappy in the background and stuff. And he was like, bring her over. Let's have a look at her. Hello, sweetie. And the thing that we kept saying was, we kept, the thing that we just were so amused by, that just became an in joke for the crew, is when he says trousers. But also when you work with someone like that, you realize how professional they are. You realize like they know exactly what they're doing. And what he did was great with us in that he gave us, I mean, Stu did the same thing, Stuart Lee did the same thing, where you basically agree 3 kind of tones for how they do the narration. And then for each section, they'll do it in each of those tones. And with Ray, it was like soft, normal, ultra Ray. So there are some where he'd really grab into the mic for it.
Ultra Ray, that's amazing.
Ultra Ray. And he knows himself, and he knows his audience. He knows how people see him, and he can do it. And he so, but equally he can do something which is not growly and which is just a really professional voiceover. You know, it is so. He was amazing. We're really lucky. Like we've worked with really great people on all of our documentaries. It's really special.
It is good. What are you working on now? I know there's something else in the works. There always is with an artist. John?
We're just finishing up a documentary about Christopher Lee.
Wow.
Which is great. There's never really been one about him, and it's called The Life and Deaths of Christopher Lee. And we're having so much fun. It's amazing. We did some great interviews for it. We got Peter Jackson in Australia, in New Zealand. We've got, because I wanted it to be kind of him telling his own story. He's a fascinating guy, Christopher Lee, and I really wanted his kind of voice in it. So we've got him narrating it kind of himself, and we hired do you know Peter Serafinovich?
Yes, amazing.
And he's great, and he nailed it, and we had so much fun. He kept just
amazing.
I don't think he had actually done. He knew he could do it. He wouldn't have taken the job if he couldn't do it. But I think he wasn't sure. He hadn't like done it a lot before we started actually doing the recording sessions.
Yeah.
And the way he gets into it is that there's this one interview he's obsessed with of Christopher Lee and Terry Wogan, So that would be on a big screen in his booth, kind of playing, and he would just start talking along with it. And then he would get into the voice and he'd get into the mannerisms, and then he'd be like, "Okay, I got it," and we could record for a whole chunk of time because he was in the kind of mode. But he kept like, like mid-record, he'd suddenly stop and go, "This is really good, isn't it?"
That's it. That's amazing. Because you always need a gateway word. If you're going to do any form of accent, any form of taking someone off, you need like a word to get in to the whole thing. But to do, and normally you can only do, you know, it's just somebody like myself who's not very good at impressions at all, but I could probably do a couple of sentences in an accent, then it just trails off because you lose the key words. And it's the skill of being able to continue that whole line in that accent and that prose and that timing. Christopher Lee as well, it's timing, isn't it?
It is what exactly. He was a very brisk speaker, and the thing that's really interesting for Peter was it's very easy to do an impersonation, to do a caricature of someone, but it's not easy to actually find their voice and their mannerisms, because it's not a stupid film that we're making. So there are times when Christopher Lee is going to be doing the Christopher Lee thing, and kind of. But truthfully, most of the time when he's telling his own story, you're not looking for the caricature, you're looking for the actual voice itself. And Peter's done incredible work with that, and it's been such a kind of privilege to be there with him, watching him work on it and watching him and then just nail it. And
because he's brilliant. I mean, he's one of those. If you're never familiar with Peter Serafinovich, and if you can say his name as well, that'd be good. But if you're not familiar with his work, honestly, the guy's just amazing. So if you haven't heard of him before, go and check him out. He's absolutely unbelievable.
He had his own, the Peter Serafinovich show, and it's all on YouTube, and it's so funny. It's like, it's beyond impersonation. Like, some of it is impersonations and some of it's characters, but his actual, his sense of humor is so kind of warped. It's just delightful.
He is very, very, very good. That's another. You see, another comedy guy that I love. You see, I love comedy, so comedy programs I'm in with, and comedy films I watch some, but there's not many good comedy films these days, is there?
There's not. There really isn't. It's a real shame. I mean, it's just kind of changed. It all feels these days. It feels like that thing that Will Ferrell kind of developed, where it's kind of like partly improvised, where you just kind of shout stupid things at each other for a bit. It kind of feels like that's kind of taken over a lot of where comedy used to be really clever and kind of not necessarily subtle. It feels now that it's just people being loud at each other.
I think we talked about genre of film. We talk about it something regularly. We talk about on this podcast. It used to be genre of film and also age of film. I think the 80s. We always come back to the 80s and that comedy era. One of my favorite films, probably my favorite film of all time, is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Just because it's just a wonderful piece of work, and it's got two actors at the peak of their powers, and that is their best work, in my opinion, both of them.
Definitely. It's one of those films, and that's what I always see as delightful, and that's like I wanted to talk about in a bit when we get onto the actual list of films, is that there are certain films which are just better than they need to be. When you find one of those films, it goes straight into your heart. And Planes, Trains, and Automobiles would be a hilarious, funny film if it was literally just all the things going wrong and them getting annoyed. But the emotional core to it is stunning. It's stunning, and it comes out of kind of it comes out of both of their kind of truths. You can see it, and it was John Hughes who wrote and directed it. Who he's a genius in his own kind of way, and it's in his own separate genres quite often as well. But that's one of those films which is better than it needs to be.
Yeah, it's a good way.
When we came up and visited you on my birthday, the present my wife gave me for my birthday that year, which was this year, is they've just put together this beautiful CD box set of John Hughes music from John Hughes films.
Wow.
all of them. It's Breakfast Club, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, everything. And they're done as playlists. They're done like as mixtapes. So
Wow.
they're all mixed up with each other. And we listened to that whole box set on the way up to Leicester and on the way back. So Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is forever linked to you in my head anyway.
Honestly, my comedy heroes, John Candy, it's Ronnie Barker. They're my kind of two. I mean, but I've got many others as well. I love a lot. There's a lot of comedy shows I love, but yeah, it's I think that film in particular because and it's that, and I don't want to spoil it. If you haven't seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, please go and watch it. It's not often I'm going to give film advice, but the ending is just so perfectly timed. It's so glorious, and it's just even now I'm thinking about it, and it makes you kind of like, got to watch myself here. I don't want to get too emotional. It's brilliant.
And the first time you see it, I mean, again, it's going to be a spoiler to some degree, but you don't see it coming.
No.
It's something you don't expect from a film like that, and it's so incredibly special.
One of my favourite T-shirts is my Del Griffiths shower curtain ring sale. I've got. But yeah, anyway, so we will get to that. We will get to the 5 desert island films. If you're going to be stuck on a desert island, we've ripped off the BBC. Let's face it, they've ripped everyone else off. Let's face it, done it for years. That's political commentary there. I'm only joking. But 5 desert island films. If you were going to stuck on a desert island, what films would you want to see?
Okay, so I have my list here in no particular order, and I would say that all of these films, again, I'm not saying these are the best films I've ever seen, but what I am saying is they're the films which speak to me and which I am drawn to more. So they're the films that I have watched the most.
And I've got to give credit to Ryan for this question. He originally came up with this on YouTube. Obviously, it's his fault that this happened. So, but I think it's lovely because it educates me. You might see people that watch this and listen to this will be able to kind of go, "Oh, I love that film." Oh no, that film's terrible. But it gives people something to shout at the telly or shout at their phone or whatever they're listening to this on.
I would never see this is why I get very angry about things like the Oscars, because I think I'm always like, how can you call something the best film?
Not as angry as Will.
Compare two films, like everything is different, and the joy of film. There's something about, I mean, like I was probably 6 when we got our first video recorder, and I started going to video shops, and that has never left me. And we've got, I mean, Jesus, we only moved into this house a year ago, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I've got a collection of, I think it's bordering on 7,000 discs of DVDs and Blu-rays. Like, it's, and part of that is because when I had to shut down my video shops, I took a lot of them back with me, because it was just like, they weren't worth much to sell, and they're worth a lot to me. And there's something about going to a video shop or having a collection of DVDs. And I've got a great friend called Barney who, wherever I move to, he comes and refits these shelves that he's made. He's made perfect DVD shelves. So he's followed me to all different flats and houses.
We've got mates like that. Those that can't DIY have normally got a friend. My mate Ravinder, Rev's one of my best friends in the world. And it's not just because he's amazing at DIY. Literally, he will be coming to put the walls in this room and start this one. These boards are up so nobody can see yet. And he'll be coming to do all that. So you need a guy. And the shelves, we've got scaffolding boards with these shelves, and that's the same with that.
When we moved into this house a year ago, I still don't know how the hell I did it, but when we made Real Britannia, my family, we were basically homeless for a year. We had this terrible thing where we'd sold the cottage, and we had the offer accepted on the house in London that we were going to buy. And the day we packed up and left the cottage, we were coming to London a month early. A friend let us borrow a house for a month, and both deals fell through.
Wow.
So the sale of our house fell through, and then the purchase of the other house fell through. and all of our stuff had already gone out with the removal company. So for a year, we were living in Airbnbs, hotels, friends' houses, short-term lets, and this is with a a 3-year-old daughter, and like it was hell. And I still don't know how I managed to do a TV series in that time. Like it was nuts. I had none of my books with me. I had none of my stuff with me. Everything was away. And when we bought this house, we'd said right from the get-go that the first thing that's going to get done is my office, because I have to be able to work. And Barney was just like, is this the one, John? Is this going to be the dream office? And I was like, Barney, this is the dream office. And we designed, you can see the great big, this desk runs the whole length of the room.
Wow.
I'll send you some pictures, because he just did the most beautiful job. We sat down, we designed it together, and it's a place for me. I mean, I spent, I literally work here. Like after I've dropped my daughter off at school, I'm here from 9 to 5 in this room working, and it's perfect for me. It's the perfect environment. So, but he's the guy who always built the shelving for all of, and he also did the shelving in the video shop, the original video shop. He was the shop fitter for it. So he had taken stuff out of both of my video shops and put it into my house when we closed them down. And then once I moved to London, he came and he built this custom stuff, and it's beautiful. And the reason that is important to me is because I don't see film as a kind of, that's a great film, that's a bad film. I see it as just a million stories, and the idea of being able to stand in front of a wall and choose what story you are in the mood to see at that moment. Like, maybe you need something to energize you, or maybe you need something to calm you down, and maybe you need something which is deeply nostalgic, which is going to really kind of cuddle you, or maybe you want to see something disturbing because you're angry. And that is what film is to me. It's not about kind of this ratio of kind of like good or bad or anything like that. It's the idea that you pick one of these things off the shelf, and all of a sudden you can be anywhere in the world, you can be anywhere in the universe. It can be musical, it can be depressing, it can be uplifting. It's just incredible, like, to have access to that many stories, all of which will affect you in the way you want. It affects your equilibrium in the moment as you need it.
And
that's
very,
what you felt.
and that's very true. There's that thing of like people, and this is something I think. So I've found good films has been, I mean, it doesn't happen now. I'm so busy, but if I was bored years ago and I was looking around the telly, there was no sport or no basketball, no football that I wanted to watch. I go, oh, this film looks fairly interesting. You start watching it, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow. Or it's a film you've got on DVD and you'll still watch it because it's on telly, which is really weird. That's a weird thing. But I think one of the films I did that with, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of it, but I discovered this film. I'm going to discover that. I'm going to get you the name in a minute. It's up there somewhere.
I want to know if I'll be able to identify it.
So it's not a massive film, but it's a film that really affected me. It's a guy that basically he's a student doing well in school, and he just decides he's had enough and just goes to Alaska to live, and then basically dies. He starves to death.
He dies in the camper van. What's it called? I know exactly the film you're talking about.
Yeah, so that film I found was deeply affecting because it's such a beautifully shot film. It's stunning, and it's like his way of life, and you see that, and then afterwards he left absolutely shattered. I was just like sat there for I must have had 45 minutes, just sat there after the film going, I don't know what. Films can really affect you, I suppose, is the point I'm getting at. And that was a film I just discovered by mistake, which is really annoying me. I can't remember the name of it.
There was when you're like open to film in that way, and just to go, I'll kind of watch anything, there was an amazing, Disney made a live action film in the 80s called Never Cry Wolf. And it was just about a man who goes to live with wolves. But there's one other guy in it as the pilot who drops him off and picks him up. And the whole film is just this guy who basically goes feral, living with wolves out in the kind of Alaskan kind of snow plains and stuff. And you just go, why was this film even made? What a wonderful thing that this film exists.
Yeah.
And that's like with Highlander, I'm always delighted by those kind of films where I just go, there's no obvious reason to make this film. What a bizarre film, and what a great film. And I'm not someone who particularly likes David Lynchy kind of stuff, the kind of the darker stuff.
Mm.
But you get these crazy films like Buckaroo Banzai, Across the Eighth Dimension, and you go, how did this get made? It's wonderful that this exists, but how did this get made? It's just,
Who
yeah.
backed it? What were they? There is a lot of that. What were they smoking at that particular time? With a lot of.
Well, the thing is though that to get a film made, it has to pass through a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's not just like one guy smoking and going like, I've got a great idea for a
No,
script.
but that's what I
Like
mean.
a director had to connect with it, a studio had to finance it. It's just, and they don't make films like that now. They really don't. Like we're in a terrible age for film where, although there are still some good films being made, there's nothing bold. Like people aren't trusting filmmakers to just go out there and deliver something.
Yeah.
Things are being held to very tight kind of patterns. You have to make a film in a certain.
And we see the rehash, don't we, with the films going, look at the old characters, what do we need next? So we'll bring this one now because that was what kids remember. So we see that, with all the films, you think about any of the toy lines, the big toy lines, most of them have kind of got either films rumored to be in the process, or there's been a film made. And some have been successful, some haven't, but they're all rehashing old stuff. So the new ideas, they're out there.
I get upset kind of for the kids because look, I grew up on Star Wars and it didn't do me no harm, but why is Star Wars still about? I'm just like, it shouldn't be for kids today. Like, and even all the Marvel stuff, that's kind of from the 60s, and it's just like,
It wasn't big growing up in our age. It wasn't the thing, was it? It was an earlier sort of 10 years before, and that would have been big. But I don't know. The kids love it though. I mean, it's a good story. I mean, so they stick with it. I mean,
it's not. The thing is, see, this is where it comes in, the Spira paradigm to good, bad, like and dislike. It's all right to like The Mandalorian. It's all right to like Ahsoka. It's all right to like Rogue One. But these things are made because they're commercial.
Yeah.
They are made to make money. There is not one person involved in these projects who has gone, I've had a lovely original idea. Let's make this. What it is a corporation going to someone like Robert Rodriguez or Jon Favreau and saying to them, we want you to make a new Star Wars thing. What can you come up with?
Yeah.
And then go away and go, all right, Star Wars, here's a story that's not been told. And in every single, the most disappointing thing to me is that Lucas created this universe. And in all of these things that have followed, the sequels, the Rogue One, the TV shows, they have not had the guts to step more than one step away from the original stuff. I just like, they do The Mandalorian, and then Baby Yoda's in it, and then they do Boba Fett, and they haven't got the guts just to create a new character. And even with The Mandalorian, in the last episode, they had to get Luke Skywalker into it in a really creepy digital way, They haven't got the guts to cut the lines and say, all right, we've got this whole universe, let's tell a new story. They're too scared to do it, and they just want to please the fanboys. So it's a respectable kind of transaction,
Yeah.
Fans are getting what they want, and the studio giving them what they want. But like, it's culture that suffers if there's nothing new coming through, if there are no new voices. And the thing about all this stuff, science fiction back in the day, when you look at every kind of iteration of Star Trek and stuff, it was always reflecting on society at the time. The whole point of science fiction is to hold a mirror up to society and what's happening now. Instead, what we get with these shows is we just get a rehash of old characters doing stuff. And I get upset personally. The one thing, if you're going to ask me to read a book that you've written, or listen to a song that you've written, or watch a film that you've made, the one thing I expect from it is that you've got something to say.
Yeah.
There's a point. You're asking me to listen
I
because you've got something to say, and I can't engage with something that doesn't do that.
I think people are looking for escapism, and they're happy. The thing is, we're in a nostalgic world. The world is nostalgic. We look back at things. We've already said about films and stuff, and they don't rehash. And they want that warm, comforting thing of going, "Oh, look, R2D2's in that one." There is that element, and people are looking what they call it, Easter eggs or whatever they call it online or whatever, and they're looking right at these things and going, "Oh yeah," and then they look into it, and it's this whole. So it's got its own world. But I think there's that whole thing of like, I would like to see a Star Wars world where, we don't know the characters. I mean, Mando was kind of that, but then obviously we had Baby Yoda, who I thought it sounded when that was first. I heard, oh, there's a new thing coming out, and it's got a Baby Yoda. I'm going, this is going to be terrible, and I actually loved it. I actually really, really, genuinely, the first series in particular was just like, this is like a Western. And that I was in from that point. I thought this is great because it was like, but Star Wars always has been rehashed. It was, it's Lord of the Rings in space, it's the Bible in space. Call it what you will. You know,
Kind of. I mean, I know what you're saying because Lucas took it all from Joseph Campbell,
yeah,
but he made the point that Lucas was making with those first films, and by working with Joseph Campbell's work, was that he was saying the thing that Joseph Campbell, as an academic, had discovered was that the same stories were told all over the world. There was a human story that even before cultures were connected, the same story was being told. It's a story, for some reason, it's a story that appeals to humanity. And George Lucas very cleverly told that story for a modern generation. It's very clever what he did. But there was a lot in all of that. The point is that was already imbued with messages, so many messages for people to learn from and to be inspired by. I mean, when you say that you enjoyed the Mandalorian because you're like, oh my god, it's like a Western. Well, why couldn't they just gone and made a Western? Why did it have to have Star Wars iconography? That's what upsets it for me.
because Clint Eastwood's too old now, and he's the only one you can see in a
So
Western.
let's find some new Western stars and let's find some new voices. I get excited when I find new voices and stuff. The only film that has blown me away, like new film, in the last kind of 5 years was Nomadland. And do you know that movie?
I know it did very well, but I
It,
don't know what it is.
it did surprisingly well, and it's by this wonderful female filmmaker, and it's a story about modern times. It's basically Frances McDormand, who is a woman whose husband has died. The whole town has shut down in kind of middle America because the plant he worked at shut down. Her husband's dead. She was a teacher. The community's died, so the school's basically gone. She got made redundant, and she basically lives in a van. And the film follows her for a year, and she is a nomad. She's a modern nomad in America. So at Christmas time, they all go to the big Amazon plants, and they all get part-time work packaging stuff up and sending it out and stuff. And in the summer, they kind of get together in different places. And it's a very beautiful film, but it's also a very sad film. And the reason it's so special is because it's talking about what is happening right now,
Yeah,
you know? And that generation that George Lucas came from, the films that they made, there was so many it was so affected by America coming out of Vietnam and all of these things. And that's kind of what I want to see, I want to see young people, new voices talking about the world that they are subject to. And you can do that in fun ways. You can do that in comedy, you can do that in science fiction. I mean, Star Trek, the original Star Trek, broke so many boundaries. It had the first interracial kiss, it had, all of this stuff going on. It made you think about race, it confronted racism
yeah,
straight on, and I just look at the stuff that comes out now, and so little of what comes out has something to say about the human experience,
yeah.
and so much of it it's just Star Wars style stuff. Just like, just
It's rehashed. You know, you think back to those sort of original those cartoons, whether it's He-Man or whatever. There was always a message, and that was sort of important. I think the message has been lost. So
absolutely every episode ended. They stated the message, didn't they? They literally came on screen and told you what the message was. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, they told
yes.
they didn't. You know, if they did, you know, if it wasn't, you didn't get it from the story. We're going to spell it out for you. You know.
Do you know what's great? The one thing that's great right now, which will feed into nostalgia for the next generation for 30, 40 years, is Bluey. It's an Australian cartoon about a family of dogs, right? And all of the, we're now out of preschool, but all of the preschool parents will go, "Are you watching Bluey? You've got to watch Bluey." And eventually one day you put Bluey on, going, "Oh, whatever. Okay, it's a cartoon about dogs." And it what it is it's a cartoon about family life. And it is the first thing I've ever seen which is honest about family life. I'm talking about, like, you can watch like dramas made for grown-ups, they're a little too dramatic. And Bluey just basically says to you, we all mess up from time to time. Your parents will get things wrong. You'll get things wrong. And it's about how you communicate with each other. And it will warm your heart. There are episodes where I sit sobbing watching this cartoon about blue dogs in Australia.
Amazing.
It has so much to say about the human experience. And I've started saying to my mates who don't have kids, like, you've really got to check this out because it's something that's really special. There's a whole episode. I love silent cinema. I love old silent movies.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer that because film is a visual medium, you don't necessarily need talking. That's the whole point of it. There's an entire episode of Bluey with no dialogue in it at all. It's a kids show, right? It's a kids cartoon. And all that happens in the episode is it starts raining. And Bluey goes outside and she tries to build a dam. She just wants to build a little dam to stop the rain coming round. And she has to keep going in the house to get more things to build this dam. And her mother gets really angry because she's treading water through the house and stuff. And she's taking clean towels outside and stuff. And then eventually her mother realizes what she's doing and she goes and helps her. And then it just stops raining. And that's the whole episode. And it's just a moment in which a mother understands that her daughter is doing something which in the moment is important to her.
Yeah.
There's no dialogue. And it's just like, this is like watching a film made by the greatest filmmaker in the world, but it's a cartoon about Australian dogs. Stunning. And I know that my daughter will have that forever. Like we're taking her to see the stage show at Christmas, and I know that Bluey is something that is going, when she will be talking about nostalgia in 40 years' time to your kids.
Yeah,
she's going to talk about Bluey because it will take her back to the whole family sat on the sofa together, enjoying it together.
I'm going to watch Bluey. I'm in. I will watch that. I'm writing that. I've got my notes. I'm writing that down now.
Oh, it's all on BBC. The BBC iPlayer's got all of it.
I'm on it. I love a bit of iPlayer. I only watch I watch Gone Fishing on iPlayer. I don't fish, but I love that. I love
fish,
but I can only watch it in the bath. Feels like the best medium. It feels like the best medium to watch it on. You know, I've always got a sense of danger that I'm going to knock my phone into the bath as well. So I don't know.
I love that you say. On one hand, you say you don't watch TV, and on the other hand, you say you're watching TV in the bath.
I'll watch Gone Fishing in the bath. Yeah, it's just like a thing. Only Gone Fishing. The TV programs I will definitely watch. Have I Got News for You and Gone Fishing? They're my two.
Gone Fishing is perfect.
It's beautiful.
There is nothing like it. It's beautiful.
It's really nicely. It's just it's.
Have you watched The Detectorists?
I have watched parts of The Detectorists. Yes, I haven't watched it all yet. But yeah,
that's got the Gone Fishing vibe. That's got all of those lovely shots of nature.
Yeah, it's all like, and musically, it's very much sort of like, It's nice. It's just a nice, and it's nice, and it's well paced, and it's well acted. So yeah, yeah. Again, I see. I do watch TV occasionally, but again, it tends to be when I have my bi-weekly bath. Right, we're going to get to your top five films. So we need to get these top five films done, and you need to tell me about why I need to watch certainly at least one of them.
There's only one of them which I'm going to make you watch. All right,
I'm
I'll
already
tell you.
down to Bluey.
I'll tell you about the other four first, and if you want to watch those, I don't think you'd
And,
regret it.
and I'll tell you if I've seen them as well. So go on then. I've got pens. I'm official.
So the first one, as we've already discussed, is Highlander,
Yeah.
1980s, directed by Russell Mulcahy, who made some interesting films, but he never made another film like it. And it is epically directed, and it really is like a medieval epic, which cuts straight into 1980s New York, really kind of grimy, punky kind of stuff, and lots of other kind of historical periods. And it's all about a group of immortals who have existed since the beginning of time, who are fighting through the ages to win the prize, which is when there'll be just one of them left, he will win the prize. And to do that, they have to chop each other's heads off.
Right.
So there's a lot of sword fighting, a lot of stunts, and Sean Connery plays his best mate, and he's wonderful in it. Sean Connery is so great in it. So Highlander is just I adore that film, and they've just put it out in 4K, and it looks stonking. It's just a wonderful. And Queen did the whole soundtrack.
Oh, okay. That's great. Yeah.
Know the Queen album, A Kind of Magic?
Yeah.
That's the soundtrack to Highlander.
Oh, very good.
So, and Brian May did, like, I think they worked with Michael Kamen maybe, but the Queen songs also come through in the orchestration in the score. So really lovely, really
Okay.
great film. Next one is an oddball, but it's a film that I've gone to the Matter for many times. It's called Flame, but it's also known as Slade in Flame. And back in the day, bands used to make films, and I've always been a bit obsessed with films either about bands or starring bands, you know. And the last great one was Spice World, which I will not hear a word against. I thought the Spice Girls movie fantastic fun. And in the 1970s, Slade, at the height of their success, decided they were going to make a movie. And you would expect a Slade. What would you expect, Joe, from a Slade film?
Right. So my memories of Slade are basically Vic and Bob doing Slade.
That's what you would expect a Slade film to kind of be.
Yeah.
To be just wacky and silly and everyone messing about, and a bit like the Beatles films, everything's sped up and comedy and stuff. But instead, Slade decided to make one of the darkest films I've ever seen. And they basically said, if we're going to make a film about being a band, we want to tell the true story. And so they go into the nasty, grimy side of the music industry. So they've got management who rip them off. They've got, and who are like criminals. They've got labels who are just using them and seeing them as like disposable and stuff. And it's and you know, and they, because they are touring the country at night, and they're not playing themselves, they play a band called Flame, and it's actually set in the 60s. Beautifully shot. The camera work in it is stunning. And the music in it, a lot of people didn't realize that with Slade, if you got past the singles and you got to the albums, it made really interesting music. Quite what would be the word? Just a kind of heartfelt music, really. And so much of that film is real kind of working class squalor and really good music, and they all work in the pits and in the foundries in the West Midlands and stuff, you know, and they work on market stalls, and it's just a great film. It's not what you'd expect, and it's a film that you can watch over and over again and continue to get something out of. So I love Slade. I love Slade in Flame. That's
I've never ever been aware of that film even existing, but that's Yeah, that might be a deep cut, but I'll have a yeah. Okay.
It's to be honest, I don't know if it's on. I hope it's on streaming somewhere. It can be quite hard to get hold of because they put out on DVD a while ago. Don't think it ever made it to Blu-ray. I could be wrong about that. I think if you want to see, you have to buy one of the CDs. I think they've put it as a free disc
Yeah.
album kind of thing.
There's an old film. There's an old film that I like, which isn't around. You can't get it anywhere either. It's called Otley, and it's got
What?
Otley. Yeah, and it's
What's that?
Tom Courtenay running across the top. I've got this enduring memory of Tom Courtenay running across the top of a barge with half a beard because he was caught shaving. But it's a great. That's a recommendation for you. Left field, Otley.
I'll
Uh,
take that. I'll just write that down right now.
it's one of those films that's not very good, but it is good. I like it.
I'm all up for those.
It's amazing, isn't he?
Best. Okay, next film. So we've done Highlander, we've done Flame. Silent Running. Do you know Silent Running?
Silent Running. This was big in the 80s, wasn't it?
Late 70s, or actually early 70s.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. No.
Really fun. It's a guy who is Bruce Dern, who is the Earth has decided that it's no longer practical to have forests, right?
Right.
There's not enough space for them. They don't. They're not essential anymore. They're a whimsical thing. So what they've done is they've taken every forest and national park, and they've stuck them on spaceships in huge domes on spaceships circling the Earth. So you can tell it's like a political thing. You can tell that some politician has basically gone, "We're not going to destroy the forests. We're just going to move them, and they will be looked after." And the main character lives on one of these ships, and he is the kind of botanist. He's the guy who's in charge of preserving forests as they are. There's three other guys who live on his spaceship, and they think he's ridiculous. They think they're disgusted by him eating real food because they just eat processed stuff. So when they see him pick a grapefruit and eat it, they think it's just the most disgusting. Their stomachs are turned by it. And they all tease him and they're all kind of mean to him. And right at the beginning of the film, they get the order from Earth that to just destroy the forests and come home. They like just blow them up. So, they're all programmed. There are things you can put in. You blow up the forests, bring the spaceships home, we'll reassign you. And he basically goes a bit mad and he kills all of his shipmates and he just drifts off into space. And the whole film is him just drifting off into space in the last forest. And he re-engineers these little robots, these three little robots, and he teaches them to become his friends. He teaches them to do surgery on him and stuff. And essentially the film is about a man who is just drifting off into space in a forest and who will die in space. And that's just the end of it, kind of thing. And it's beautiful.
I'll be honest with you. I'm equally fascinated and also a little bit like going. I have that thing with films. I do have a thing with films where if I know the ending, like Titanic.
Yeah,
I know what happened. I don't need to see the film, and that's how I feel about it.
yeah, but the best films. It's not about the ending. It's about how it gets there.
I know, but if you know the ending all the time, I'm thinking, at what point are they all going to? What point is it going to sink? What point? I mean, there are certain things.
I have not told you the ending, and there's a real wonderful little twist in the tail of the ending. And anyone who's
told me that now I'm interested.
Anyone who's seen Silent Running who is looking at me right now, if they look carefully somewhere in this shot, they will see something very special from Silent Running, from the end of Silent Running. But I'm not going to give it away. And Silent Running also has a lot of meaning to me personally because it very bizarrely it became a big part of mine and Jen's relationship, and we.
She's now drifting away on a forest in Spain.
She wishes. We went to, do you know the Barbican in London?
Yeah.
So we went there one day to see like an exhibition. I've been going there my whole life, and she goes, "Oh, why don't we go into the conservatory?" And I said, I've never even heard of a conservatory. And she's like, how have you been coming here your whole life and not been to conservatory? And we went, and it was beautiful. And the conservatory is like a kind of brutalist glass structure with a whole forest and a whole, you know, lots of nature inside it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got there, I was like, this is like Silent Running. This is Silent Running. It's got the dome because the whole forest is in space with the dome, and the conservatory looks just like Silent Running. And I freaked out, and she was like, "What is Silent Running?" And I was just like, "I will show you tonight." And we went home, and we watched Silent Running, and she was like, "I loved that," and I was like, "I love you," and that was the moment in our relationship where it was like it happened because of Silent Running, and we ended up getting married there, getting married in the conservatory at Barbican.
Wow.
Had a Silent Running themed wedding, and it wasn't allowed. I wasn't allowed to tell people that it was Silent Running themed. But the night before, my mother-in-law, Jen's mum, booked a cinema for us, and we showed Silent Running to all the out-of-town guests, and all of the like fonts, all of the tables at the dinner were all named after the ships, and all of the invites and all of the fonts were the Silent Running font. And on the day, obviously, lots of my friends are filmy people, and one of my friends knows Mark Kermode, and
Yeah.
Mark Kermode's a huge fan of Silent Running, and he sent him photos and said, "I'm at a Silent Running wedding." And Mark Kermode sent a really sweet message to me and Jen back. He was like, he sent a little message to us, which was just so
Oh,
sweet.
that's amazing. I think I'm gonna watch Silent. I'm definitely gonna watch Silent Running based on the facts of everything you've told me. Also, now I did say I don't do films really. I don't watch films, but I do like. I did used to like anyway. I don't listen to it anymore, unfortunately, because of different streaming services and stuff. But Mark Kermode's film review. I used to listen to that when I listened to the radio. I was always like, "Oh, Mark Kermode." When I used to drive a lorry, so I'd always turn on for the film review because I don't listen to the music. I'd have my own stuff on, but the film review with Mark Kermode, I'd always turn it on for that because I just thought I just love listening to him talk about film.
He knows his stuff, and Silent Running is one of his favorite movies. I know
Well,
that he
I'm going to put that down on my list.
poster up on. He's got a framed Silent Running poster up in his living room. I know that. So yeah, Silent Running is a good one. So we got two more. The next one is An American Werewolf in London.
Okay, never seen that.
Have you seen the Blues Brothers?
I've seen the Blues. I love the Blues Brothers. It's one of my favourite films ever.
Well, it's from the director of the Blues Brothers. It's from John Landis.
Yeah, but it's not. The Blues Brothers isn't. It's one of those films that isn't a good film, but it is amazing. I love it.
Trying to show off this one.
Yeah, the Blues and Bill.
Yeah, signed by John Landis.
Oh wow,
Drive safely.
wow, that's awesome.
Um, American Werewolf in London is one of the most important films in my life to me. It really spoke to me in a lot of different ways. And if you get the Blu-ray or the 4K, I've got a documentary that I made on there about kind of why American Werewolf is important to me.
Oh wow,
I won't bore you with that, but what I will say is that American Werewolf is a film unlike any other film in that it's a horror comedy film,
right.
and it is both of those things separately, and no other film has done that. It works as a horror film, and it works as a comedy. It's one of the funniest films you'll ever see, and it's one of the scariest films you'll ever see. And because it combines those two things, you get this thing where you care about all of those characters. You really care about them, and that's kind of where the horror is in that film. The horror is that he is turning into a werewolf, and you like him, and you don't want him to have this curse,
Right.
but he does. And that's it. It's the film very simply is um about two American teenagers who have just finished school, and before university they decide to go hitchhiking around Europe, and they get to Britain and they hitchhike to the moors for some reason, the Yorkshire moors. When they get there, they find themselves in trouble because there is a werewolf on the moors. It
Yeah.
is full of amazing British character actors. The thing that people always talk about is it's the first film that Rick Mayall was ever in.
Right. Okay.
And he's only got one line. He's practically an extra in the bar scene. He does have one line though. And basically they get attacked by a werewolf, and then one of them dies, and one of them wakes up in London, in a hospital in London, and it's what happens. And it is good on so many levels. Everything. Talking about film being better than it needs to be. American Werewolf is a film that when I used to teach screenwriting, I would make people watch it who would normally not watch that kind of thing. People who don't like horror films. I mean, like, middle-aged women my mother's age,
I am a middle-aged woman your mother's age, apparently.
I
I hate horror films.
hate horror films too. I hate horror films. I hate violence.
Yeah.
I really am not a fan of horror films. American Werewolf sits outside of horror films. And
Okay.
the you will, I promise you, you'll like it. I promise you, it's not something that will scare you in that
You
way.
thought about a job in sales, John? Because honestly, I'm like, I've got a list now.
It's how I get my films made, Joe.
Uh,
You've got to be able to sell them. And
yeah.
if you work in the video shop industry, you've got to get people hiring films. But yeah, American Werewolf is hilarious and wonderful. The special effects are, they've never been equaled. The John Landis had this one ambition. Hello, mate.
That's
John
right.
Landis had this one ambition, which was to do, which had never been done before, and it's never really been done since, which is to do a werewolf transformation in full daylight. So
Wow.
you literally see a man go from sitting in a chair reading a book to being a 300-pound wolf. You see the whole transformation bit by bit. And just from a special effects point of view, it's unbelievable just that you're watching that. It's never been done since. It's never been bettered, and the effects are so good that they still look good today. It looks real. You really think you're seeing it. So, American Werewolf in London, just do it. Just go for it. You'll love it. You will love it.
Okay.
And it's
Last film because we're
last film
out of
is
time.
Midnight Run. Have you heard of Midnight Run?
Midnight Run.
Yeah,
I've had
it's
them.
Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin.
I've had them a couple of times, but I've never. No, I haven't. I haven't heard. I don't think I've heard of that.
Really simple film. Robert De Niro is a bounty hunter in New York,
Right.
and Charles Grodin is a accountant who has found out that he was working for the mafia without realizing it, stolen a ton of their money, and got caught. Right.
Right.
So he got caught and he was bailed, and he used like a bail bondsman to pay the bail, and he skipped bail. So Robert De Niro is given the job by the bail bondsman. He's like, if you can get him from New York, if you can find him, catch him, get him from New York to LA by tomorrow morning, I will give you enough money to retire. Because Robert De Niro just wants to get out of the game, you
Right.
know. So it's for him as a professional bounty hunter. It's an easy job. He keeps saying it's an easy job. It's a midnight run. He's to get an accountant, not even a criminal, not even a hardened criminal, to find a middle class accountant, grab him, drag him across country, get him back to the police, get enough money to retire, and everything goes wrong. And it is not only the greatest road movie ever made, because they have to travel, apart from planes, trains, and automobiles, they have to travel by every form of transport. But what you've got Robert De Niro, who's like, a hard ass ex cop, but then you've got Charles Grodin, who's clever. So they are constantly having to battle each other. Charles Grodin's trying to escape the whole time. Robert De Niro is trying to keep him nailed down the whole time. And on top of that, you've got the FBI after them, you've got the mafia after them, and you've got another bounty hunter who wants to steal him and cash him in himself.
Right.
So it's a road movie overnight, basically over the course of a night, although it ends up taking a couple of days. And the reason it's so good is because that's a fun enough story as it is. But like, if you're going to hire Robert De Niro to play the main role, like the greatest actor of his generation, you're going to get something else. And if you're going to hire Charles Grodin, one of the greatest kind of comedy actors of his generation, you're going to get something else. The whole cast are perfect. The writing is perfect. The directing is perfect. And if you talk to anyone who really knows cinema, it's not a film that's ever going to win any awards, because films like that don't get Oscars.
Yeah.
But it's the most watchable, enjoyable film.
That's
And you will, no one has ever got bored of Midnight Run. If you're flicking channels and you see Midnight Run is on, you watch it to the end. And I would argue that it's the most perfect, enjoyable, watchable film that's ever been made. And it's got, like with Planes, Trains and Automobiles, as their relationship develops, it also develops a kind of very serious kind of sweetness, and you start to see who they really are as well. It's the perfect film. It's the film that it doesn't matter what's happened in the daytime. It doesn't matter what is going on in my life. If I see it on TV, I'll watch it from beginning to end. And if I need to just stick a film on, I will stick it on. I think I've seen that film probably 10 times more than any other film.
wow.
Hundreds of times. It's perfect.
That sounds like my kind of film. That's one I'll try out.
Love it. That's the one I'm going to push you to try.
So far, John, you're definitely winning the ones that I want to watch most out of, you're up there, mate. So that's good. So yeah, that's mate, that's great. So that's your top five. We're going to ask you as well, just very quickly, because we are short of time. We're not short of time, but we are pushing our podcast limit here. Music question: the genre of music that you hate the most. This is kind of like a backdoor question. This one, it's like one of those ones. Is there a music thing you hate? Because I was just thinking about this today, and there is definitely one I hate.
I don't hate anything because I think the notion of hatred comes from quite often just not understanding something. So the stuff I don't like, I will fully hold up my hands and just go, I've not given it enough time. I don't understand it. But I don't like the kind of I don't like I know there's a word for it, but there's a type of singing which is all warbly. It's just, it feels like Christina Aguilera kind of started it.
Oh, that sort of technical sing. Yes, I know what you mean. That's
and they don't, and Britney Spears and those kind of things. I know there's more modern versions of that, but they play to. It's like they're singing a song, and they're not even like the actual backing track is all just whistles and beeps and kind of and.
Oh, you're sounding old now, John.
I
All this
know.
boom, boom, boom music.
Yeah, I can't. I really struggle to kind of get into that kind of thing. I think that's it. I was always the same, because a lot of my friends are real music snobs.
Yeah.
And they'll listen to kind of similarly kind of stuff which is made to be inaccessible.
Yeah.
Like Can and stuff like that. And like
Can and Kraftwerk and all that sort of.
yeah, exactly. And I can respect it, but like it's made to kind of it's made to challenge you. And I guess with music, I like to be challenged with other things, but with music, I don't really like to be. I just like to.
I like some Can stuff. I've got to say, I like Zappa and stuff like that. So I'm way out there.
Sure, there you go. You're like my friends, so I can respect that.
But I'm not a music snob, because I will equally listen to, I don't know. That I've got to admit, there are some I think Genesis are good. there are musical things that I actually quite like other music as well. So I listen to a lot of hip hop. I listen to a lot of indie music, and I listen to a lot of, I don't know, prog, which is really snobby. But at the same time, there's certain types of jazz where I think it's just like you're playing that to be a pain. It's like musically, there's going and they're going, yeah, I've got you now. And the other guys go repeat. And there's that thing which I know at the musical side of things is fascinating. But for me, I just want to be entertained a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I think in music sometimes that kind of thing is about them performing it rather than us listening to it.
Yeah, and I think that's the same with film as well. There's like, I don't want to watch a 2-hour Russian documentary about snow. Thank you very much. It's not my.
Don't knock the 2-hour Russian documentaries. You never know. You never know. You never know what's going to speak to you. There's I've talked about it endlessly before, but like there's a documentary called Shoah, which is a 9-hour documentary about the Holocaust, and it is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. I adore it, but I understand what a turn off that is. And like, who's going to sit down to watch 9 hours of it?
Just a big, where it says editor, there's just a big blank space.
No, the reason it's so long, it's really interesting. It's a really well-made film. But part of the reason it's so long is because the filmmaker is French, and he will ask the question in French. The translator will translate it into German for the person who's answering the question. The person will reply in German. It'll get translated back into French, and that's when you see the subtitles. And the thing that's crazy about that is in that time, the camera is always on the person, always on the subject. And you can see it just does this weird thing where they have to live with their answer while it's being expressed to somebody else. It's hard to explain, but it's beautiful. It's really.
I kind of know where. Yeah, all right.
I'm not going to tell you to watch that.
I'm not. I tell you now. If any of these films are sort of like pushing on 2.5 hours, I'm going to be struggling. I'll be honest with you.
Oh, I can see that. Just have a nice long bath.
Oh, mate, the water will be cold, and I can't watch it. It's only Gone Fishing. Gone Fishing. That's it. Because it's water based. I mean, I could watch one of the ones, when I'm in the bath with, anything.
Watch Jaws or The Meg or anything.
If it's got a boat in it, a ship, or on the sea, or maybe involving a particularly small submarine, then we could sort it. But yeah, but yeah. So anyway, John, it's been amazing, mate. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, I've got my object. I've still got my
object. I forgot. I tried to cut you off and kind of thought, well, that was as good to go out with. But you've got your object.
I spent so long thinking about this.
Oh, you need to do it then. You know what it is? I've got a list, John, and I've not written the object down.
One nostalgic object. That was the one thing which I was just spending a lot of time going. Crumbs, I don't know. But what I've come up with is so perfect for like my definition of nostalgia, just to kind of tie it all up to the nostalgia kind of theme. So there's 3 of them. This is actually my most recent acquisition. Part of me in my head said, what are you doing? And when my wife saw them, she was like, why did you buy those? And it was hard to give an answer, but I think I'm able to give an answer now. I think this all ties in. Okay, so let's see if. Okay, I'm going to hold one of these up. I'm going to see if you can identify it straight away.
So this is a Knight Rider set. I know.
Well done. Okay. So you're already there.
Okay.
So there's that. That.
For those of you that are listening, who's holding up some cards with Striker Knight written on them in the Knight Rider font. Okay, now
they say Striker Knight, on the other side they say Striker Rider.
Striker Rider.
Can you hazard a guess?
No, go on.
So, I think it was 1984. These were giveaways in boxes of Shreddies and Shredded Wheats.
Wow.
Okay. So they did a Knight Rider promotion, and what it is, and I'm obviously not going to do it, but you press these out. As you see very carefully, they've got perforations.
Yeah.
You press them out, you put them together in a cross formation, and it's like a throwing cross. So like at that time, everyone was obsessed with like the ninja throwing stars.
Yeah, nunchucks and ninja stars. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Knight Rider branded cardboard throwing star from a box of Shreddies. And part of the reason I bought these is because I can't believe they still exist. They're in perfect condition. And you know, how have these survived 40 odd years? These little pieces of cardboard. You know, who got them out of the box? And either you're going to throw them away or you're going to use them. So how are they in the unused condition? Someone would have had 3 boxes. You don't get all 3 in one box. Anyway, I'm rabbiting on. But when I think about nostalgia, I think back to being about that age. When you talk about real nostalgia, that thing where you think about the past as a really special place, rose tinted glasses, all of that stuff. 8 years old, sitting at the breakfast table with my whole family, especially in winter. It was the coziest kind of like, it felt so good just to be with family and to know that we're spending this little time together having breakfast, and then we'd all go off to different schools and different jobs and stuff. And I was already obsessed with film and with TV at that point. And one of the most exciting things in the world to me was when you'd get a free gift in a box of cereal.
Oh, it was. Yeah.
Believe it. And they were exciting anyway, but when it was film related or TV related, oh, you know, just nothing better. And my dad, bless him, who's a lovely man, he realized very quickly that I hated shredders and I hated shredded wheat. And that whenever I asked him to buy them, it's because there was a free gift in them. And he would have to eat 48 shredded wheat to justify
Yeah.
the expense, you know, be on the toilet for weeks, you know. And
It's not happening.
because he always encouraged, and still does, encourage my love of film and stuff. He would always just do it anyway. He'd suck it up for me. Do you know what I mean? He would pretend to my mum that he fancied eating shredders for a week, and she'd know, you know, because there'd be film stuff on the front of it. And that feeling, being with my family at 8 years old, breakfast kitchen on a winter's day, new box of shredders, free gift inside, ripping it open, finding the thing in the box. Like these things now, like just to have these, they're like a little touchstone that takes me straight back to that day and that feeling. And I hadn't even remembered this promotion. When I saw them, they came up in my algorithm on eBay. And as soon as I saw it, because it was just that, I knew what it was. That was the picture. And I was like, oh my God, I remember those. And then the next promotion they did was Transformers. They did instead of throwing stuff, they were like paper planes. They were like cardboard
Yes.
push out
I've
planes.
literally got some of those in now.
Shut up. How much?
And oh, mate, for you, don't worry about it. I'll try and dig them out. Yeah, all sorts.
Oh,
They're amazing.
this is
But
this is I've
they're,
got, like
they're,
I've
jet,
got
they're jets, aren't they?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've got them because I was obsessed with cereal. I was obsessed with the toys as well, but we didn't have the budget to buy the main brands. But my mum would make the exception for Weetabix and Kellogg's cornflakes because she somehow believed that they were good for you. But Rice
Right.
Krispies, no, and Shreddies. I don't know if Shreddies were slightly more expensive, and certainly shredded wheat. We couldn't afford that sort of stuff. But we did have Weetabix, and I got all the gifts for Weetabix. So I too have the excitement of your childhood of sitting there. We had an Arga, you know, like a Rayburn. No, it was a Rayburn, not an Arga.
God, yeah, like heating the whole house.
Yeah, Rayburn. Not like it related to Blu-ray, the terrible comic. This was a Rayburn bloke from the pub. And there was an Arga, it's like an Arga, and they had lift up, and it was amazing because Dad used to be down there at 6 o'clock in the morning, trying to start it up, get it going. You know, have like little bits of I don't know voodoo magic, put it all in there, but just bits of paper. You'd like get it going, and the whole room. You'd walk in, and it was like an old house. So you'd walk in. This was the one room in the house that was warm in the morning, and you'd go into this room and you'd sit there with the family. You'd eat your thing. But I would be more interested in what the toy was, and that would be playing. And again, the little toys you got out of there, and they are collectible. All that sort of cereal premiums.
I'm always looking for them and they never come up. I've got I've got a full set of the Ghostbusters water slide transfers that they did in Shreddies in 1984.
Yeah.
Things that I'm always looking for is Shreddies also they did ET transfers. I would love to find some of those. They did Jaws 3D ones as well.
They did the goggles or something like that. I
Yeah.
can't remember.
There's a 3D image on the back of the box. I've never been able to track those down either.
No, I've never. I wouldn't have been. That wouldn't because I never. The ET ones, I remember getting that, and then I'd never seen ET. So I
No.
don't really know. I've never seen as I didn't grow up with a TV, so for me it was like I was getting this mystic stuff of things that people would go. I remember I was so naive. I remember getting I would collect the World Wildlife Foundation stickers because I fancied a girl called Claire. Now I really fancied this girl, and she had these stickers. So in order to try and woo her over, I would buy with my pocket money and with my money from my paper round. I would buy WWF World Wildlife Foundation stickers, the Panini album, and swap them with this girl. And this was around the same time as the WWF wrestling thing had started doing. So the kids at school, including some of the bullies, were like they're going about talking about the wrestling thing. They're going, "Well, yeah, we're going to get these stickers when they come out." And I'm like, "I've already got them. I've got loads of WWF stickers." And like, "No, you haven't." So I said, "Yeah, I have. I've got loads of them." And they were talking. They said these names, and a lot of wrestling names are a little bit ambiguous, aren't they? They're all
Snake.
yeah, Jake the Snake. Hulk. And I'm like, I don't know.
I've got the snake one.
Anyway, but I thought I'm going to prove them wrong. So the next day I turned up with all my stickers to swap, and like because they said you can't have got them because they're only out in America or something like that, only out in Europe. Things were like a rumor, but they were always overseas. You can't get them here; they're only in America because my aunt Sheila's been there. And I brought them back, and I showed them these, and they kicked me head in. It wasn't the right WWF, but there you go. And I never ever did manage to kiss Claire.
Oh,
There you go.
hey, you found your happiness.
I did, yeah. And Claire's, I still know Claire. So
Wow, okay.
But if her brothers ever listen to this, Matt and James, if they ever listen to this, they're going to rip me forever. Yeah. There you go. But yeah, mate, it's been a great few hours spending time with you. It's been lovely. And I will go and watch a lot of these films. I have got my list of films to watch. I've got my things there. I just want to say, I know next you've got this Christopher Lee documentary film, but with a mind like yours, I'd imagine there's a million ideas still going in there. So what's after that? And when's the Christopher Lee thing due out, do you think?
It's coming out in March. It'll be on Sky Arts in March. So yeah, that's what it'll be.
Sky Arts, get you.
I know, it's really exciting.
Oh, yeah. Sky Arts, you big
up from ITV.
What's your next plan after that?
No idea. Genuinely don't know. What I want to do for my next projects, I want to do another book, and that is going to be. I was working on a book with. There's a film director called Mike Hodges who directed Get Carter, which is a very famous film that you should also watch, and Flash Gordon, and loads of really classic films. He actually died recently, which sucked. He died last Christmas. But we were writing a book together at the time, which was just an ongoing discussion about cinema, just about film and about his career and stuff. So I really want to put that out. So what I want to do next is get some time to kind of because it was all done by email. It was a collection of emails. I'm not sure if I'll put it out as almost as emails.
Yeah.
I don't know quite how I'm going to do it yet, but that's what I want to do next. I think that's probably going to be the next thing. I don't know about next film. It's really weird how films get commissioned. It's really strange. And what always seems to happen to us is we're in a position where someone just says, come up with a bunch of ideas for us, and they'll pick one, and then all of a sudden that's the film that you're doing. So there's a series that we really want to make, which I'm not allowed to talk about, which we're hoping will be the next thing that we do. We also want to do a sequel series to Real Britannia. I don't know how likely that is, but we'll see. Yeah, and that's about it. It's yeah, there's always something.
You said, not a lot really. They wasn't reeled off a list of things. I knew there would be.
There's loads. I mean, honestly, to make a living in this industry, you have to have at least kind of 20 ideas at different states of development, like just all the time. And you never know which one's going to spark. You have to have all of your irons in all of the fires.
All of the time.
Yeah. We thought this year that we were going to be making this TV series that looked like it was going to happen, and that the Christopher Lee film was going to be kind of just a 1 hour, 50-minute kind of little project on the side. And then the series fell through at the last minute, and the Christopher Lee film suddenly got a ton of interest in it actually being a proper feature film. So it just, you can't predict what's going to happen. You just have to have lots of ideas and always be prepared and just be ready to jump in and do the work.
Well, mate, I'm sure we'll all be watching. I certainly will. I'll try and keep up to date. But if you want to check out any of Jon's previous work, please go on, put in Jon Spira into IMDb, and you'll find his stuff. And I'm sure you'll agree, he's a thoroughly nice man. So thanks for appearing on Podstalgia, Jon. You've been superb, mate. I've loved it. I've had a really good laugh. We've gone way over time, but hey, we'll see you again very, very soon.
Definitely, and hopefully in real life as well. We hope to come back up and see you again soon.
Definitely, Jon. We'll speak to you soon. Thanks very much, mate. So that's it. Another episode of Podstalgia is in the books. Thanks very much for joining us. However you join us, whether you're on Spotify, one of our other streaming services, or on YouTube, thanks very much for joining in. If you can leave us a 5-star review, that'd be great. And if you can leave us a nice comment on YouTube, we also appreciate those, and we like hearing your questions. Remember, we're going to ask you the week before we get a guest on what questions you want to ask them. So if you see those come up, please, if you've got any questions for those people, even if it's just generic questions, way that we can improve the show. We've already taken on some questions permanently. Ryan's stolen the BBC TV top 5, sort of desert island discs, I think he does on the BBC. And we've got the, desert island films, I suppose, which is a great question. We've also got others as well, which we're going to continue to use. So you guys can drive this. You can be the suggestions. You can make the suggestions that you want to see on the screen or listen to. But thanks for joining us for a podcast. We really appreciate your company. And please tell your friends, inform your enemies. We'll see you next time with another Podstalgia. Peace.